Welcome to the Ed3 Podcast. My name is Rick, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Tisha. Tish, you've been to the UK many times before.
Many times before, yes.
You love the UK.
I would move there tomorrow. Would sell all of my belongings. All of them.
Well,
people think I'm joking. I would sell them all, and I would move. I would.
I mean,
So,
you're more than welcome
was
to
that
hop
going
over
to be
the
your
pond.
question?
No, it wasn't. It was going to actually be, excluding myself,
Okay.
what is the best thing about the UK?
That's hysterical. This is a hard question. There's so many. I cannot just
I know
one.
mine.
Yeah. So Lindy is our guest today. We'll give you an official intro later. Lindy, what is yours?
Full English breakfast. Full
Yeah.
stop.
So, full stop. You're not wrong about that. So, I will have to say the food. I'm going to say the food in general because I want to pick the full English breakfast. And we can talk about some of the things that Rick taught me about with full English breakfast that I actually enjoy. Not everybody would. And then there is this. It's like a Scandinavian breakfast type thing. It's a situation they have at the hotel. And I am currently eating that right now every morning for breakfast. Okay, it's lox. It's like some heron. It's some fancy cheeses and some toast with an egg. It's like a whole situation. It's so good though. And then fish and chips. I mean, I could keep going. But I think for me, it's the food. It's the food.
You know, a lot of people knock on British food. Sorry,
I
Rick,
think
but
they're
it's
crazy.
True.
They do, but they don't know what they're
husband and
talking
I-
about.
No,
They have no
my husband
idea.
and I both are huge British food fans.
Yes. Yep.
Full English
I will
breakfast,
say,
fish and chips.
here's the thing, Lindy and Rick, both. Last week, Rick told me about something called cheese on toast. Okay. And you could search TikTok or your favorite social media platform for cheese on toast. And
It's a
he's
delicacy.
telling me how to make it. And I think I did it wrong because I made it last Saturday. And I looked it up on TikTok, and this guy on TikTok was giving me extra things to put in it. I even went and bought the special ingredients, which we do have here in the US, Rick. I forgot to send you a picture that I have.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there.
I
How
know.
did you mess up cheese on toast?
I don't know.
The title is the description.
I know.
You get toast and you put cheese on it.
I know.
And then you stick it in the oven.
I know. I know what you're thinking, and I was actually going to be embarrassed to tell you this, but Lindy brought it up, and so now I had to tell you that so Jason and I were eating it, and we both made this face, and I was like, something has gone wrong here. I don't know if it's the bread. I don't know if it's how I toasted it. This is a typical Tisha thing. Rick taught me, and even though I knew how, but he really taught me how to make real tea in a teapot.
Yes.
And there's
I was disgraced when I saw
So,
how she was doing it.
No, it was not that bad. It was not.
Yes, it
Some people
was.
put their water in the microwave.
I know. And that's
I have a kettle. I have a teapot. I have what is it? Lindy, what's your favorite tea over there? Do you have a favorite brand of tea from the UK?
Oh,
Do you drink tea is the first
I
question.
do. I do. And fun fact, I actually was never a coffee drinker. I was always a tea drinker. I just started drinking coffee in the last few years. So the last time I was in England, I was like, the last couple times I was in England, I was a full tea only drinker.
Yeah.
So that's part of my full English breakfast is I just love getting not just when you order hot tea in the US, you just get a cup, but in the UK,
it's a whole
Ireland,
scenario,
a whole thing, and the pot. I just
it's
love
an event. It's an experience.
And then you pour and you sip.
Well, why do you think you haven't even seen my actual setup because I've added to it. I have everything there, and I know I'm getting some like a really fancy teacup with a saucer for Christmas because I saw it. So I'm with you on all the things. So Rick, what is the part of the full English breakfast that you taught me to have that you said not everybody likes it? And then I had it and I was like, yes. Do you remember?
Black pudding.
But I was just going to say black pudding. I knew it.
Black pudding.
Yes.
Black pudding.
I do. Yeah.
I love black pudding. Lindy, have you had black pudding?
I have had black pudding.
What's the verdict?
I'm in the middle. I will eat it. Is it my favorite? No, my husband loves it.
Yeah. As long as you aren't talking to me about how we got there with the black pudding, I'm fine. Right? We're not going to go into those details today, but yeah.
In Montana, I'm from Eastern Montana. I live in
Mhm.
Western Montana, but from very more like traditional Eastern Montana. And we make these mincemeat
Yes.
cookies.
Yes. I know what you're yes.
And
Yes.
they are absolutely delicious as long as you
Yes.
don't know how the
Yes.
meat is made.
Yes. Yes. There's
It's the
there's
same
so
with
many
lunch.
things. Yeah. I will tell you this though, that is going to be hands down my favorite thing is the food. I feel healthier and better than ever when I am eating in the UK, but the minute I get to America, it takes me about 3 days. And I'm
I
like,
mean,
what is in
Tish.
our food? Because
Yeah, I mean,
feel the same.
you asked me not to ask any political questions, so I think that's probably a great stopping
Okay.
point.
Well,
And I think we need
Lindy was in
a
agreement. She nodded. We
Well,
need
yeah,
an
I would agree
intro.
with that.
I was gonna say that in terms of your cheese toast. Like,
Yeah.
we have some bonkers gross cheese
That's what
in
I'm
the United
saying.
States of America. Like, it could not have been your fault, Tish. It could
I
have
don't
just
think it
been
was.
the cheese.
I think it was I think it was the actual version of
No,
cheese I got
literally.
or the bread.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have this little market down the street and it is run by an Italian family, literally from Italy. And so I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just going to go see if maybe I can get some of their cheese and maybe it's a different experience. So I'm going to keep you all posted probably on TikTok on this.
Cheese on the bread, I would say, Tish.
But I didn't want to record this because I knew Rick was going to see it and give me a hard time, which here we are. Okay, so our guest today is Lindy Hockenbary. And I love to do a little, I do this with everyone because I like to see what ChatGPT says. And I really do a white paper on all of you whenever you join. So it's always fun to like kind of see. And rather than giving you a whole spiel, I'm just going to kind of give you some words that describe Lindy. And Lindy, you can then give us a really detailed description of who you are because we want to hear it from you. K-12 educational technology consultant, speaker, trainer, author, teacher, edtech strategist, partner, let's see, AI, integrated PD, meaningful learning, Montana, let's see, one-to-one tech, curriculum writer. Ooh. Professional development manager, ed tech developer. This is incredible. And I see that it says you've trained educators across multiple countries and US states. We're going to get to that later. You also have something in common with me as a Google Education certified trainer, Microsoft Innovative Educator, New Zealand certified educator. Is this all correct? Is this like accurate?
Man,
Okay.
you're making me sound awesome. I love
here's
it.
I'm looking for
earlier.
I'm looking for a vintage bell because I'm going to have it on my desk, like a school bell. I've been looking for one. I haven't found the one that is meant for me yet, but I will get one. So I would be jingling it right now because it says trained in the Gym 9 instructional coaching model that ties you to our former guest, Brian. If you haven't watched Brian's episode, you want to go watch that one. I love that that is part of your resume because that tells me a whole lot about who you are and kind of what your approach is when you're coaching. So give us, Lindy, just a little blurb about you. Tell us who you are, what you're about, what are you passionate about, and what is keeping you awake at night that you want to solve?
Okay, I love it. So I'm a lifelong educator. That's why all of those adjectives and verbs sounded so great because I spent my whole career in education. I started teaching middle school and high school. I taught career and tech ed in the US. So I taught business education and
this is why we're best friends. That's what I taught.
What? No.
I did. Yes.
What? No
I did.
way.
I middle school, high school. Yes, middle school, high school business. I started teaching in business classes and did multimedia and webmastering and broadcasting. Yes, I'm CTE all the way, but it's business. Yeah.
I did not know that. Okay. Well, there we
awesome.
go. It's amazing when you start digging into ed tech that a lot of us did come from that business education world. Because so in the US, business education can be very tech heavy. It can be business, what's traditional, like businessy, like account. I did have an accounting class, but that was it. Yep. Mine was, or like a blend of both. Mine was very tech heavy. It sounds like yours was too, broadcasting.
It was very tech heavy. It was very much, let's learn all the things about Microsoft Word and put them in a portfolio.
Yeah. I had a computer application. Actually, I think I even had computer applications 1 and computer applications 2 because my sophomores got computer applications 1 and the juniors got computer applications
Well, don't you think
2.
if you had a business ed degree or you were teaching that, the mindset was, well, you are doing all of these things, so you must also know how to program, coding, broadcast. You know everything that is in the little tiny computer that we've given you.
So did you do BPA, Tish?
Yes.
Did you have BPA? Okay, I was the BPA advisor.
Yes.
Rick,
yes.
you don't know, BPA is Business Professionals of America. So,
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that.
All right. It's what's called a CTSO, Career and Technical Student Organization. So FFA is like the big one that everybody knows.
Yes.
And you have BPA, you have FCCLA is the
There's so many acronyms. You also have TAFE.
Skills
We have
USA.
TAFE. So that was like teachers. The teachers, the students that wanted to become teachers, they had their own group. It was very much, it's interesting. Those groups were so big whenever I was teaching, and I don't hear so much about them anymore. And I don't, but it's just because maybe it's not coming across the community Facebook page or the school Facebook page. And I think those classes, that's what I was going to say. Those classes, as a teacher of those classes, I was learning every single day. And I think it does have a lot to do with how you said, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a lifelong teacher. Like, that's just what we learned. And I think we need to go back to that. You've contributed in so many ways. So I'm going to ask you something because I'm like looking at your list. What do you do? What does Lindy do when she wants a break from all of the things that we just mentioned?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, if people know me, they know I'm a dog lover. I have dog. Actually, I don't know if you can see it in the little small shot, but I have my little Easter egg Boston Terrier right here. I'm especially drawn to squishy face dogs. So I've had everybody knows me. I'm like the Boston Terrier lady. I've had 4 in my life. I was 15. I think I got my first when I was 15.
Wow.
I now have a Boston Terrier and a French Bulldog. So very much.
Amazing.
Oh, a French Bulldog.
A French Bulldog. Yes. I have to get a pug in my life at some point. I just learned about a Frug, which is a French Bulldog mixed with a pug.
Oh.
Crikey.
There's also Bugs, which are Boston Terriers mixed with pugs. My husband knows I have a list of dogs that I have to have.
You could also have a dog TikTok channel and do all kinds of education over there because you just taught me things I didn't know in 20 seconds.
You've never heard of a frog and a bug?
I've never. But it isn't. You know what, Lindy? We talked about this on the podcast a little bit. I grew up on a farm, and I don't really talk. You would never know that, but I literally had 13 horses at my house and goats and miniature donkeys and all the dogs and all the cats and peacocks running around our house and everything. And so now as an adult, because I was so immersed in that, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm okay without a pet for just a little bit longer.
I 100% feel that because I have no desire to have. I also Eastern Montana. So I grew up in way southeastern Montana, as rural as you could possibly get. A town of 400 people. There's only 1,200 people in the whole
This
county.
tells me everything about you. Yes.
And so ranch community. There's more cows than people in the state of Montana because Montana only has 1 million people. And we're the 4th largest state. So we have more cows than people. There's only 3 states that have more cows than people. And so growing up in that environment, I grew up in a ranch environment. I am not a rancher. I am not a farmer. I have no desire to
Do you have
livestock.
Boots? Do you have boots or cowboy hat?
No, I have no. This tells you
I don't either.
I am not that. I've never owned a pair of cowboy boots. I'm probably one of the rare people from Eastern Montana that have never owned cowboy boots.
Yeah.
There's people in my neighborhood that have chickens, and I'm like, absolutely never.
No, isn't it interesting? Well,
do not want chickens.
Just said a lot in this, and if you're a listener, I know Rick is sitting there processing everything that you just said.
I'm Googling East Montana at the moment, if I'm honest, because
here's what you should know, Rick. Literally, Lindy is describing pretty much how I grew up. It's very rural. We've talked about those places before. And I will tell you, people who come from rural communities and grew up in those,
Tish,
those are your most authentic people. What? You're interrupting me.
I'm going to interrupt you, though. When you started talking about 13 horses and peacocks, I'm only going off the UK's version of that, and I see a massive garden of acres, a manor house.
It was
Pride and Prejudice style and everything like that. So
I don't want to. I'm going to tell you, it was acres and acres of land that my dad had, and yes, you do have to have that whenever you're having horses because they have to run.
Yeah,
somewhere,
I understand
right?
that, but you have to consider we're talking Texas and the UK.
Yes.
And acres of land in the UK is just flat greenery with trees and sculptures and a fountain in the middle and all that kind of stuff. And I know what land looks like in Texas. It is not the same as the UK. So I'm just having to do some Googling at the moment to kind of catch up with your conversation.
You'll never understand the scale. Texas and Montana have a lot in common because Texas is the second largest state, right? It's Alaska, Texas, and then California, Montana. So we're huge. Texas and Montana also have a lot not in common, but we have a lot in common. Different climates.
Yes.
Texas has way more people.
Yes.
But like just the sheer size and space. Like I'm talking my stepdad's ranch was like 30,000 acres.
Yeah.
I think. And when you talk to people from like Indiana, like farms and ranches, they're like 1,000 acres and they can't even fathom
that. Yeah. It's huge. It's huge. I think
I'm sorry. Can I just ask one thing? Can I just get you to repeat? This is really going off topic.
This has become an agricultural learning experience because Lindy and I are on
side of my like Eastern
I
Montana
love it.
background.
This is what we want. This is what we want.
Yeah.
Did you say 35,000?
30? I'd say about 30,000 would be my guess. Some of that is like BLM land and that kind of stuff. So it's not all like some of it's leased land. But
I hope you use that image on our promo because your face is hysterical.
No, I've literally just Googled this. That's 1,500 acres larger than the city of Manchester.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what she was trying to tell you.
And there's 500,000 people in Manchester in the city centre.
Yeah, and just to give you an idea, like that 30,000 acres ran about, I don't know, we'll say like 300-ish cows and like 500-ish sheep.
They're living a life of luxury compared to people in Manchester.
That's how much land it takes to run livestock in Eastern Montana. Like you need a lot less land in other parts of the world, in other parts of the U.S. too. But Eastern Montana, Southeast Montana, there's no irrigation. So in order to like feed them, you just have to have a lot more space,
right,
to run a smaller amount of animals.
This is such a good topic. First of all, Rick is learning so much. His facial expressions while you've been talking, Lindy, are my favorite. I think you were the first guest to put him in a speechless mode where his mouth is just open.
This is very common amongst my colleagues. No, I was just gonna say this is common amongst my colleagues that like we're only 1 million people in Montana. So I always say I'm 1 in a million, and people just like really and the other thing you have to know about Montana is Eastern and Western Montana are completely different in terms of landscape. So Eastern Montana is very flat, like ranch farmland. Western Montana is the mountains, Montana.
It's very similar, like Texas. You've got like how he was saying, like I've been to Texas. Well, you've been to this part of Texas, but you've not been to the other part of Texas where it looks completely different.
Yeah. And actually, Montana and Texas are flipped. So Eastern Montana is very low population, like mostly cows. Western Montana is still low population, but a lot more. Most of the people in Montana, most of that million, are in Western Montana. Texas is the opposite. All your cities is in the east, and the west is like nothing.
And I grew up in the west. That is what you should know, which is when you said, and I was like, that's where I come from. And that's the thing. I think people who grow up in these rural communities, there is something like so ingrained in us. I've talked about this often with just my family, my friends, like you said. I posted a TikTok about this the other day, but I have never met a stranger. I may not know you, but I'm going to help you. If I see that you need help, I'm helping you. If we're at the store and you're short $1, I'm paying for your whole thing. Like that is what I come from. That's what my dad did. That's what people in our community did. If I was stranded on the side of the road, and had a flat tire, I wasn't having to call the police or call roadside assistance. Somebody in the town was stopping and they knew me or they knew my dad and they were helping me, right? And it was just like, that's what you did. And I think there's just something to say about that. It tells me so much about who you are and what you came from. And I think it's so important when we're talking to educators and even students, asking them, what's their story? What is it about you? What else do you do? Because Rick and I talk about this a lot, but putting even educators or students in boxes and leaving them there is so unfair because there's so much more to every student and every teacher than what you were seeing in that exact moment. And so the fact that we got on with you and we kind of did your little resume drill, but then look at all of the things you've already taught us and our audience just with your
Exactly.
experience. So thank you for sharing that. Wow. Rick, do you have any questions following up before we move to a different topic?
I'm still amazed at how small Manchester is in comparison to things in the US.
That's so
I'm
funny.
thinking my main city, where I've lived all my life, is like the biggest thing, and then it just gets like drowned by a ranch.
Lindy
think-
just totally
Just destroyed everything.
One ranch,
38
one
years
in a
of-
million. Lindy, 1 in a million, came in and just totally destroyed what you thought.
Yeah, my whole philosophy for the last 38
It's
years.
fine because, you know, people from the East Coast and the Northeast in the U.S., they don't understand the
They don't.
sheer, like,
Can't
size
just can't
the West.
comprehend.
We've had people and I've taught with people actually. Some of the teachers I taught with, when they retired, they moved to Montana intentionally because they wanted the space, the silence, the quiet, the less people, and it's so fascinating because I cannot imagine how connected this is the other thing, being so connected to nature, being so connected to the life cycle, being so connected to just like your intuition. I mean, you think about it, that's a lot of cows and a lot of sheep, and you're watching these life cycles in front of you and watching them, essentially really just do what they do. I don't know. It's amazing. Do I want to visit Montana right now? Probably not, because
No.
I've seen TV shows and videos. I don't want to do it, Lindy. I am
I'm in
tropical.
June,
Yeah,
July, August,
exactly.
maybe September.
I
September's
mean, there's
usually
very limited places I can go in the winter. Even Texas is very cold, so I'm not really prepared. But what I would love to know, Rick is still processing. I can tell. Rick and I have this like
I've got a
attunement,
question.
and I'm like, you have a
I've got
question?
I have a question for
Okay.
a change.
Okay.
Of all our 30 episodes in, I actually
I do
have a
want to say
question.
before you ask your
I mean-
question, it's the blue theme today. We didn't do this on purpose, but I showed up with my blue glass that I thrifted. Lindy has a blue shirt on. I have a blue shirt on, and Rick has his
Has
blue
my-
lights on.
My typical blue lights. I think so. Let's move from the ranch to back into the classroom.
What? You don't want to talk about ranching in Montana?
I do.
Let's move from the ranch. Maybe
to the
one day.
classroom.
Maybe one day we can all have a ranch together. Like,
I'll be the person in the office doing the accounting.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
I think so. Obviously, I mean, I'm still amazed by size of things in the US, and that's not an innuendo. So you've got there's so much experience that you have with everything that you've done. I want to be a pain in the backside and say, what would you say has been the biggest lesson you have learned so far from students and or adults, teachers, parents, anything along those lines?
I would say my biggest lesson learned from students is don't underestimate them. I tell that to especially we tend to underestimate students of all ages, but especially the younger, like K1, 2 ages. Especially what I do is help teachers use technology as a learning tool and leverage it in the right ways. So often I hear from like those K1, 2 teachers, oh, my students couldn't do that. I'm like, no, they absolutely could, but you have to scaffold a lot more than you would with like high school kids, right? You've got to back up, take little baby steps and scaffold them in, and don't underestimate them. Don't.
It makes me so sad to hear that, because I heard that too in the classroom, and this is really no shade to anybody. It is a very common phrase that I think a lot of us have heard, but like, quote unquote, my babies can't do that. And I'm like, they absolutely can. Did you give them a chance? Did you try? Did you give them a chance to try, right? I just think that we are underestimating in general our young learners who are going to become our leaders. And I think if you set them up to underestimate them without even knowing it, wouldn't you say that we are setting them to believe that about themselves?
Exactly.
If teachers are doing that.
Mindset, growth
Yeah.
mindset. What are you doing when you do that? Like you're doing the
Yeah.
opposite of a growth mindset
Yeah.
for both yourself, as the teacher and your students,
Yeah,
honestly.
absolutely. Okay, well, this is going to be a hot topic, but I'm going to go back to what Rick asked you. I want to know what has been your biggest lesson when working with adults in education?
Oh, adults in education. Man, well, that's what I spend most of my time doing
Mm-hmm.
now
Mm-hmm.
is working with teachers, doing lots of teacher PD. My biggest lesson learned, that's a tricky one for adults. I would say is they just need time and they don't
Mm-hmm.
have time.
Yeah.
Cause like when you're a classroom teacher, I spend a lot of my time now too working with ed tech companies and
Mm-hmm.
helping them make sure that their products meet the needs of classroom educators.
Sure.
And a lot of the times you're talking to people that haven't been in the classroom, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so educating them on just the sheer fact that maybe you're lucky as a teacher to have an hour of non-instructional time a day. And when you say non-instructional time, sometimes people that aren't teachers will look at you like, what does that mean? That means that that's time where you don't have students in your room, in your
Right.
face, right? Like you actually have
Right.
time to answer your email and plan and
Right.
grade and do all the things that you have to do as a teacher when you're not actively teaching. You're lucky in the US at least to
Mm-hmm.
have an hour a day. That's not even, I spend most days more than an hour answering my email. That's not even time
100%.
to like answer your email,
Yeah.
let
I
alone do
think
all the other things and learn and try new things. And now with all these emerging technologies that are
mm,
changing everything, like they just need time. If they had time, we could do so much more and do really meaningful changes, but that lack of non-instructional time is such a load-bearing wall for educators.
I love how you said
Mm.
that because as you were saying that, I was realizing that when you were talking about the ranch in Montana, it's the same thing. You were talking about the reality, and Rick couldn't even imagine it. So you were saying ed tech companies, we've talked about that before, and I give Rick a hard time because obviously he's
You
been one of
always
those
give me
ed
a
tech
hard time. You
ed
you
tech, ed
never
tech
give me
companies.
time off.
But essentially, there is not that experience. And so he needed time to hear what you were saying. He needed time to research what you were saying. He needed time to see
It's a new
what,
reality.
yeah. And I
Yes,
think
exactly.
that a lot of times, oftentimes, people who are not educators cannot even fathom the reality of a day in the classroom in the same way that Rick could not fathom your ranch experience. Thank goodness for these companies hiring educators or consultants or people who have that experience. What I have sometimes found in my history of working with people like Rick, I'm just kidding, is that sometimes
People
they
like
are like,
Rick.
no, I'm just kidding. Give me the scenario. Like, what is it? And I'm like, don't say that. That wording is not going to hit how you think it's going to hit, or that product or that feature or that thing. They don't have time to even do what you're saying is going to work. They don't have time. You're going to add 4 more clicks to your platform. Well, they're not going to want to add 4 more clicks to their day. And it
I talk about
sounds,
clicks all the time.
yeah, it sounds extreme, right? Like, I think people think we're making it up. But the truth of the matter, as a teacher, if you've added 4 more clicks to my workflow, I'm not doing it.
Well, okay, but
Right?
here's how I try to explain it is like, all right,
Yeah.
4 more clicks, but imagine those 4 more clicks are to just look at one student assignment of some type. If you're an elementary student teacher, you probably have 20 to 30
Yes.
kids. What's that times 4? I'm bad at math in my head, whatever that is. Now let's take middle school and high school teachers that probably have 100 to
100.
200
Yes.
different kids a day
Yes.
times 4.
Yes.
That's how
Yes.
many clicks that teacher now has to do just to
Yes.
look at one student assignment.
The one part of it, that's just like one little tiny piece of the puzzle. Yeah, you're
Yep.
absolutely right. No,
And then
that's
times that by every single day, right?
right.
Like you're
And the
just on
ask is it's insane. It really is. It's insane, some of the asks. And again, teachers have so much on their plate. Okay, so I want to ask this. I want to know, because I want to shift a little bit and talk about AI, because we just said teachers have a lot of things on their plate. There are some districts that are pulling in AI to their whole districts. There are other school districts that are like, nope, we're not doing AI at all. So it's like one extreme or the other. I saw this when everybody, and you may have too, when everybody was doing one-to-one devices or they weren't doing one-to-one devices. And the same thing, all of the different platforms coming in. So my question to you is, what do you believe AI is going to look like in 5 years?
Oh, man, hitting me with the tough questions.
This is why I have Tish on the podcast. I just sit
Yeah,
here looking
Jess.
pretty. So
this actually fits really well with what we were talking about, of like a reality that you can't even imagine or can't even think. Like that's where we're going to be in 5 years with AI, in my opinion. Like I can kind of picture it. I'm kind of a visionary in that way, and I can kind of see, but most people can't even begin. Like imagine, so right now you've got ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and Copilot and Perplexity, and we have to go and we have to type into them to get the responses. ChatGPT does have an amazing speech to text feature, which I use all the time. By the way, that's one of the biggest tips I give to people.
It's my accommodation. It's my accommodation for my own self. I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, this is what I need to ideate, and I've even told ChatGPT myself. Yeah, it's a brain dump, and I'm like, you're not right, and I'm not right. So,
and you know what? I people know that I absolutely love Claude. I use it all the time. It's a great writer. It's more creative than the GPT models, but it doesn't have it, and that drives me crazy. And guess what? Gemini, I'm using more and more with their new Gemini 3 model. I'm checking right now just to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wait, no, it does have a microphone. See, that's why I checked.
Yeah, the microphone. That's the thing, though. Accessibility, I do think, and that is kind of why, I teeter on the AI. Someone really close to me, a mentor, is like, if we aren't careful, AI is going to take over everything. We've talked about extremes on this podcast. So I'm not about extremes, but what I will say is AI is so good at accommodating, not just for me, but I talk a lot about students who need accommodations. And if we aren't showing them and modeling how to accommodate for themselves, they're going to go out into the world and not know how. It's like a drastic change because you have a teacher supporting you every day, or multiple teachers and your parents, and then you're out into the adult world and you're like, well, I don't know how to accommodate this task. AI has helped me so much, and it's also helped me teach my son how to accommodate for himself, and teaching how to use it in the right way, which is what I think, I know that's one of your passion topics. I am a huge advocate of digital citizenship, media literacy, and all of that. So I want you to tell me, just because we can't even fathom what it will look like, how do we, teachers, parents, product people like Rick.
Don't start bringing me into the conversation.
How can we prepare our students who will be leaders, and they will be our bosses, some of our bosses. Don't get it wrong. Some of those kids in school will become your boss.
Everybody.
How do we prepare them for the AI? How do we prepare them for how to use it correctly? How do we prepare them to vet what is real and what isn't real with AI?
I love that. Well, I think a couple things come to mind. The first thing is, I think we have to shift the language from, you kind of said it, from preparing. We're not preparing them for the future. This is now and has been for a very long time. We live in a world driven by big tech and algorithms, and we have for a very long time. So if we keep this idea of like we're preparing and we're focusing on the future, it's not the future. It's the world that they're living in right now. And if you, let's say that your school has decided, which by the way, when you were talking about the accessibility and inclusivity piece of technology, there's a huge push. It might just be my algorithms, my social algorithms.
I already know what you're about to say, and I want you to say it because I have it written down and I haven't said it yet.
That right now, especially the last few weeks, I've been noticing this huge push of taking devices out of classrooms, going back to computer labs. There was a big story last weekend that was just taking over my social
Was
algorithm.
it the one where the California parents were saying, take all of the, I want all of the one-to-one devices out. My kid is on this iPad.
That one. Mine was Kansas, that there's a school in Kansas that's taking away devices and going back to all textbooks, paper, pencil, everything. And I just can't and there's some, I somehow, my Facebook page algorithm is showing me another page of an educator that focuses on IEPs, people. Her literal, the name of the page is something about
individual
IEPs.
education plans.
I keep trolling. I'm trolling her on Facebook because she keeps posting things about, like, she posted this Kansas article about how great it would be to just take devices out of classroom. And I keep commenting on it, and I'm taking screenshots of comments from other parents and other educators that are sharing stories about, like, one parent said that would be the worst thing that could detrimental to my student that has not dysgraphia. That has dysgraphia.
Yes, right here. You're talking to all of us right here. Yes, that's what I was going to say. So we've talked about that, and I'm not letting Rick talk yet. So Rick, don't make me mute you. I will give you a moment to talk about it. But
I'm holding my tongue.
If you're listening and you listen to the podcast a couple of episodes before this, Rick was on a soapbox because I read to him a quote. I didn't say who it was from, but it has stirred a lot of conversation about this exact topic. And what I will say is, one, it is absolutely detrimental to go all in with technology and then quickly do a knee-jerk reaction and pull it all back.
Yep.
On top of that, I am going to ask all of you listening, because I already know Rick and Lindy know the answer, but I'm going to ask all of you listening. Imagine the amount of money and lift it would take to replace everything that exists in a school, the devices, the management, the student information systems, the apps, the learning management systems. Like, I could go on and on. Imagine the amount of money and time and work and effort it would put in to replacing all of that with curriculum that doesn't even exist anymore.
And what people don't realize, you know how expensive textbooks are, people?
That's what I'm saying.
Workbooks.
And how quickly they were already out of date when we were using them.
Mm-hmm.
You are just, is that the point to set us back?
People that work outside of education know how much textbooks and, like, workbooks and curriculum cost.
Tell us, Lindsay. Tell us how much.
Millions people. And they know that technology is expensive
why?
Because they buy technology.
Yes.
But they don't buy textbooks. They don't buy workbooks. They don't buy curriculum. They don't know that schools spend
then think about
millions.
the training. And think about the teacher shortage. Like, you think you have a teacher shortage now, you're going to add more to their plate. I just cannot even imagine on a much larger scale. Like, I can't imagine doing it in one district or one school, but then you're all wanting to do it. And I think it's so interesting because when you look at the parent ages, I'm like, okay, but I think maybe we were part of the problem. So you can't be blaming technology. It's like people want to blame the thing instead of taking some accountability for themselves, right?
Yep.
Can I just jump in and say
Rick,
one thing?
It's time.
Can I just say one thing? I'm just going to say this one
You're being
statement.
taken over by women.
I don't care. Tisha's always taken over the conversation, so I've kind of accepted it.
He's about to go off on a soapbox, which is why I was holding back, and now it's time. Now it's time.
I'm being calm.
Okay.
I just want to repeat one thing that Lindy said previously about AI, that we're building their futures by teaching them AI. Well, AI's here right now. So if we're wanting to take one-to-one devices out of the classroom, if we're wanting to go back to textbooks and writing and everything, okay, and we're also trying to prepare them for the future, for their careers.
But the future
is now. The future is now, but let's say hypothetically, let's just look at it as the student's future when they go out into the world and they're working. How many jobs in the world just does pen and paper? How many jobs?
And no laptops.
How many jobs actually? I will go back to our previous episode of the pen is mightier than the keyboard, but it got me thinking, how many jobs actually has a keyboard? Majority of them. The cashier at the supermarket has a keyboard. I was at a store yesterday, and even though the device they were using was old, it had a keyboard. When I go and use a self-checkout at Tesco's or Sainsbury's, I'm using technology. If I'm a doctor, I'm using technology. If I'm flying a plane, it is technology all around us. So why on earth do we think that it's good to completely remove technology from the classroom when they're going to use technology in 10 years' time when they go into careers?
You know, something I do that I push back on this is I make teachers think about what's your philosophy behind why we have public education. in the US. And it's
Mhm.
super interesting to hear their responses. Everyone's like a little bit different, but usually you get something out of we're preparing them to be a productive member of society. We're preparing them for a career, right? And if that's any part of your philosophy, then
Yes.
yeah, the taking away tech and going
Yes.
back to computer labs makes absolute like zero sense. And that's not even talking about the access, the accessibility, the inclusivity part
Yeah.
of media and the pure irony of
It's irony.
focusing
Yes.
on personalized learning, and we want
Yes.
personalized learning while at the same time saying
Ripping it out of their
ripping
hands.
it out of their hands, going back to computer labs or taking technology access away is just unbelievable. You can't have those two conversations in one bubble because you cannot personalize learning without technology access. In stop.
And
Absolutely.
that is the mic drop
Absolutely.
moment right there.
Lindy, I could not agree more on what you've just said, because that being for me, I when I was in school, Tish knows this story. My secondary school in the UK had no idea I was dyslexic, even though it was on my record. My primary school, they were a little bit better, but we're talking back in the 90s, and the idea of fixing dyslexia
Fixing.
was to give me more things to read. Worst thing possible. But the best thing I ever got was when I went to university and they said, you know what, here's a dictaphone so you can record your lectures, because writing's slow for me. And also, we're going to give you a laptop so that you can actually do your work on a computer rather than in a handwriting in notes and notepad and all that kind of stuff. The moment I got that technology to support my neurodivergence, my
It changed your life.
abilities skyrocketed.
Well, I was just thinking about my very first year. I've talked about this former student, and I'm going to shout out her entire existence by name because I love her. It was my first year of teaching. It was my very first class. And she had an accident when she was younger and she fell off of playground equipment. Anyway, she was blind and I was not prepared. There was no accessibility training in my teacher school at all. She and I learned together how to accommodate for her learning, and she would not have been able to do all that she's done since that moment without technology. And now she's like living, I think she's living in like DC or somewhere, and she has an incredible job and she's doing all kinds of things. Just thinking back to if you said, no, you can't use that. Now, I will say she had special accommodations. So I'm sure somebody's going to come into the comments, maybe Lindy, and be like, well, we're not talking about those kids. Right? We're not talking about the Ricks and the Tishas and the
Oh,
Audras.
I had those
Prove it.
responses to my trolling comments, by the way. I had a
Yes.
teacher respond to me. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't know if this one was an educator or a parent or
Mhm.
neither. Said, well, that's what 504 plans and IEPs are for. I said, no, because this hits me personally. So my
Mhm.
husband, Rick, is dyslexic, and I diagnosed him at the age of, I think, 37.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
So he went
How-
through all, and he
How
has a
has that been
master's
for
degree.
him? Yes. See? Yes.
He went through all of
all of
K-12
that
and
without.
8 year, maybe 7 years of higher ed with nobody ever saying to him, you know what? I think that your challenges with reading for your entire life are because you're dyslexic. It's very minor. It's very minor. So he slid under the radar of rural Montana
Mhm.
Right.
education, right? But like that just hits me in the feels because he didn't have an IEP or
Yeah.
a 504 plan. And now
Exactly.
dysgraphia is a big one for me.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
I think dysgraphia is the dyslexia. So dyslexia of the 90s is dysgraphia of the 2020s, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Like it's way
Yes.
nobody knows enough about it.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
way
Yeah.
under identified. And
Yes.
for people that are dysgraphic, if you're not familiar with it, like handwriting can be really painful and is
Yes.
really hard. So yeah. So by saying like, oh, well, that's what IEPs and 504.
Well,
Not
and
to
that's-
mention it's stigmatizing.
You're
right?
absolutely right. And that's what I was going to say. So my son, and I will talk about this all day, it's passion for me too. As a childhood cancer survivor, yes, ma'am, whoever your commenter was, he has a 504. But do you know what? He still struggles with handwriting. And if you say to him, you have to handwrite everything, I promise you, he is going to fall so far behind that it will feel like he's not able to succeed at anything just because of that one thing. And it is because the chemo definitely affected all kinds of different things, right? For
It's
4
physical
years.
for him.
Yes.
Like
And
he can type
he can
so much
hold the
better.
pen. But it is such a struggle. Typing is faster. Taking screenshots is faster. Recording audio is faster. That's all faster for him because he is very intelligent. He is highly intelligent. And so I would argue back with you, Lindy. I feel like we're forming like this group right now because I'm like, where is this Facebook group? I want to join the conversation.
All right, I'm gonna share it with you guys. You guys can, so I'm not the only troller. You guys can start trolling.
There was an author comment I saw in something, and I'll have to see if I can find it. I wish I had screenshot it. But there was an author who was talking about this topic and basically said, you know, I'm an author, I'm an educator. I'm telling you, it is way more expensive to do what you were thinking and way more detrimental, kind of like I said, to do this to the people who are depending on it for, I don't know, it just goes back to Rick's point. Like, what is the point of you taking it away? Because when they go out into the world, then somebody's still going to have to teach them how to use it. Then.
Exactly.
Well,
So you're basically not preparing them.
No, you're not preparing them for anything. You're not setting them up for success. And I want to talk about the stigmatization too,
Let's
because
do it.
the argument that, oh, well, that's for an IEP or a 504 plan. Okay, so now you've taken devices out of the classroom, you've moved them into computer labs, but you're going to give one student in a class of 30 a device because they have an IEP that says they're dyslexic.
Yes.
Or whatever.
Yes.
Stigma, people.
Yes.
Stigma. The big thing with accessibility is what's necessary for one is beneficial to all. And you reduce the stigma when everybody has it. And that's what's great about like Microsoft's Immersive Reader tool and the Read and Write tool.
Well, the thing about the Immersive Reader and, you know, it's in Lumio. It's in Wakelet. I mean, like you look at all the platforms where Microsoft Immersive Reader is helping all students. I say this all the time, but if you are accommodating for neurodivergent students, you are probably hitting every student in your class if you will just be thinking in that way. And I just think, why would you add more stigmatism to Jace, who's a childhood cancer survivor who already struggles with that? You just want to add on to that? Like, it's so mind-blowing to me because I just wonder, is that the point? Is that what they want? Are they really thinking critically through this? I don't think so.
No.
Exactly.
And you know that story hits me personally too. The dyslexia hits me personally because of my husband. Your story about your son having a hard time writing hits me personally. I have carpal tunnel, and physically writing with a pencil or a pen is painful for me and has been for a really long time. I can type 90 words a minute.
Exactly.
90 words a minute, people. If you were to take away my computer and tell me I had to hand write,
could you imagine? Could
I
you
would
imagine?
Try.
Hold on.
I'm
Could
not
you
a crier
imagine?
And I would try.
Lindy, all of us, every single one of us here, and all of you listening, if our companies took away our devices completely, just you can't
I would
use
not
them.
function.
What are you doing? What?
I would not. I would literally not function. I would literally cry.
I don't think I would be at a crying phase. I'd probably be so angry because I would be like, this does not make sense. Like, you want me to achieve this thing, but you're taking away the tool I need to achieve that thing.
Which
right?
is exactly what this push. And you know what? It's 100% fueled by misinformation and a lack of good teacher training.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
And by the way, I keep saying that I'm trolling on this Facebook page. I am, but I'm nicely trolling. I'm not being a mean troll.
She's doing
trolling,
it with her digital citizenship in mind.
I'm trolling in a way to educate and try to combat the misinformation and say, you know what? No, actually, what you read, we live it. By the way, did you hear that the word of the year? Who is it that does the word of the year? I can't remember. Merriam-Webster, is rage bait.
Oh, is it? I thought it was 6'7".
Oh Oh, maybe. Well, okay, wait. Now I got to fact check.
Look at us fact checking while we're on the podcast, FYI.
Oh, now I got to fact check, but I'm almost positive that they said
rage
the word
bait,
of the
though,
year-
I'm sure is taught because, yes, that's what they want. They want everybody angry. They just do. They want, there's so much division on all topics.
Oh, dictionary.com is rage bait. The word of the year is rage bait. And you know what? You know why? Because we have a lack of teaching digital citizenship skills, which I make an argument that it's just citizenship now because
it is
so much part of our life.
But it's just basic citizenship skills. I used to teach digital citizenship skills when I was in the classroom. I would teach every freshman that came in who received a device in their hand. I would put together a whole presentation. I would go into classes. I'm sad to tell you that some of those students didn't listen and have made really bad choices that are in the news now. And so it makes me so sad. But all of that to say, it's just basic citizenship skills. You saw Lindy just now say, I think it was, let me double check that. That right there is digital citizenship. She's making sure.
I'm further fact checking myself now. And you're right. Sorry, dictionary.com's word of the year is 6-7. Oxford's word of the year is
rage bait. Okay, there we go. There we go.
And for a good reason, because adults do not understand.
They're buying into it. Think about it, Lindy, though. That's what I was saying about the age groups. So you've got Gen X and millennials. A lot of those ages are parenting these students right now. And it's so interesting because when you start really researching that, and if you lived it like us, you know that we are split. We had a whole childhood where we didn't have any of that. Nobody was teaching us that. And then we were given all of this technology. And we were having to figure it out on our own. And I think sometimes, wouldn't you say, both of you, that when you're looking back and reflecting on the past, you're always going to look back on that and think better thoughts about it. Those are the good old days. Those are the good times. Well, it was good enough for me. It should be good enough for... No, they weren't.
Were they really?
No. Like, if you wonder that, go back and watch some of the old movies or TV shows from those time periods, because I'll be watching them and I'll be like, I really loved this show when I was little, and I'll watch it and I'll be like, oh, right? Maybe that wasn't so good for me to watch. I think it's very much, again, critical thinking and creating conversations like we have here with other people who do not agree with you, because a lot of times we're going to just float in and talk to the people who are agreeing with us. And it's going to be a whole silo of no critical thinking whatsoever. And that is how the misinformation gets spread, because we're not challenging ourselves, because maybe, just maybe, it would put us in an uncomfortable position to disagree and have some discourse in a conversation. I don't know. Now I'm on a soapbox, Lindy. Ugh. So good, though. I want to know. This is what I want to know. I wrote this note down. So, Rick, this is going to be, you're going to take over and ask Lindy the questions. I'm just going to set you up. He's panicked. The whole ranching conversation threw him off. I already know.
Yeah, I'm still going on that one. I'm still going. But then again, I've been listening to the both of you on your soapboxes with this hot take. And
but it's
honestly,
true,
No, I'm not disputing it. I'm completely in agreement with both of you. I've been loving it. It's been a nice change, because that was me 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Well, I want to know about your experience, Lindy, with UK schools and teachers. And I know you've done some work there. I would love to hear the stories of that, and also really would love to hear the differences you see in the education systems.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So I'm obsessed with the UK. I love it. I love the culture. I love like British history.
Yes.
The whole bit. And
me too.
I've always kind of been interested, but it just got fueled in, I want to say it was around 2017 or 18. I got to take a trip to the UK and visit 3 schools around the country. So I flew into London, I rented a car, and I drove on the left-hand side of the road.
Yes. I haven't done that yet, but I want to.
I have so many stories about that. All I have to say is roundabouts. OMG.
Everyone that comes to the UK and drives in the UK is always roundabouts.
I wouldn't be okay. I would cause accidents. That's why I haven't done it yet.
This is what I started to do. I've realized that they're so complicated, and I was like Google mapping and trying to figure out which exit to take out of the roundabout, and going the opposite way that I'm used to. That I would go in the middle and I'd take a full loop around, and I'd find
just to make
exit.
sure.
and then go back around and take the exit, because literally after like 3 or 4 times of taking the wrong exit, and people, if you've never been in like the more of like the quote unquote rural non-London part
Yes.
of the UK, there's like no shoulders of the
Oh,
road.
there's no
There's
room.
no place to turn around. So
No.
if you take the wrong exit, you're
You've
going
committed.
in the wrong direction for a very long time. It
Yep.
took me twice as long as what Google Maps said to get to my first
Wow.
hotel, because I kept taking the wrong exits out of the roundabouts. So, okay, so that's part of the story.
That's
But
hysterical.
the more education part of the story is, so I started and I went kind of like, actually, I made a little map here. I went kind of northeast, and I went to Old Buckingham
Mm-hmm.
and went to a school there, very tiny, like super rural.
I want to do this.
School.
I have decided maybe that's how I just move there and I consult and I just go into schools and just make all the
Tackle the
teachers feel
roundabout.
great. Yes, I
It was
would.
great.
Yes.
And so this was part of a grant that they got. It was an international grant where schools across the world got a 3D printer, a whole cart of HP laptops,
Wow.
an HP Sprout, which doesn't even, they discontinued. It doesn't even
Mhm.
exist anymore at the moment. But at the time, HP Sprout. What else did they get? A whole like it was all maker learning based, so like
Yeah.
a maker learning curriculum,
Amazing.
the whole
That's
thing.
so cool.
So I got to spend a day in Old Buckingham teaching teachers how to use the 3D printer. Most of it was we were spending on the 3D printer and the Sprout, of course, because it was the
Yes.
technical pieces
Most
and like
fun.
modeling, maker learning. Then I drove back west. I think I had to kind of like go back west and then went north to Nottingham.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to visit the castle, and I have a picture of me by the Robin Hood statue and like,
Yes.
the whole
Oh
thing.
my
And the school I went to was like a little bit north of Nottingham, if I remember right. It was like Aldecar or something like that. That was super cool. Then I drove like southwest and went to Newent,
Uh-huh.
which also very, very super rural, and then back east to London. And then I got to fly
Wow.
around to 2 or 3 other schools around Europe. I went to one
That's
in Milan.
amazing.
I went to one in Milan, Italy, and I'm in the room and I'm teaching them 3D printer and all this stuff. And by the way, like those, they speak Italian and
Yes, they
speak
do.
way more English than I speak Italian.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of like stopping and
Yes.
translating. It was very interesting. But I'm in the middle of like teaching them how to use this 3D printer. We took a break. I have a whole story about the break and the coffee, and they had like a full espresso machine in the school. But
Yeah.
they
Oh,
go,
yes.
we're standing by the window, and it's like a 2nd-story window, and they're like, and we're looking out, and I'm like, what is that line of people right there? They're like, oh, that's the Last Supper. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, that's the church that holds the Last Supper. And I'm like,
Oh.
right there. Literally, the school I got to go in was
Yeah.
across the street from the chapel that holds the real life Last Supper
That's
painting. And there was a
amazing.
line, and they're like, I'm like, wait, I'm like, can I get in and see that? They're like, oh, they're like, no, you would have had to like get a ticket like way in advance. I'm like, oh dang. So I didn't get to go see it. They didn't have an inn to get me in there because they were across the
That's
street.
funny.
So yeah. And then I also did a school outside of Barcelona, Spain.
Wow.
Bellaterra, I think, was a little town. So again, that was it. So, and by the way, if you don't know this, Barcelona is like its own little like Catalonian chunk of Spain. So they speak a lot of people. There's some people that only speak Catalonian and don't speak Spanish, but most people speak Spanish, Catalonian, and English. I did not know this,
Amazing.
people, until I
Yes.
got off the plane in Barcelona, and I'm walking through the airport, and I'm like, why are there 3 languages on everything? I had to get way educated about that.
Would you say that experience really shifted your perspective
Oh.
after growing up in because same for me. I mean, like having that global perspective, once you have it, I believe you can't get away from
You
that.
can't
You
go
are always looking through the lens of a global perspective. I do that with
Mhm.
everything, building community, building products, building anything. I'm always thinking about how is this being received on the other side? And honestly, some of the best people I know are from Italy and the UK
Oh
and
my gosh.
Ireland. Like I could just keep going on and on. They are phenomenal people. The food is amazing, but the people are really, Rick, you asked me what's your favorite part. It really is the people. I don't even think they understand how wonderful they all are just because they're used to it, right? And it's not like that here. Well, what were some things that really hit for you that were so different from UK to US schools and education?
Oh, the language, how they teach language in like Italy and Spain. So in Italy especially, they go like the first half of the day where they're actually learning in English. So they're learning like math and different subjects in English. And then the second half of the day, they're learning in Italian. So it's like true immersive language experience. So that was huge for me. And honestly, so I'm from Montana. We are like the least diverse place ever, especially Eastern. I live in Bozeman. We have like a titch bit of diversity in Bozeman. A lot more, getting more and more every day. A lot more than where I grew up in Eastern Montana. That's like basically 99% not diverse, right? So I had really, up to that point, never had an experience where I was in a space where everybody spoke a language that I didn't. And I tell people this story all the time about how I wish I would have had that experience before I was a teacher.
I've said this. If you are listening and you have young adults in your house, so like 18, 19, 20, 21, like I tell everybody I talk to, the girls at the coffee shop that are just graduating high school or just in college, go to a different country, either alone, with your family, by yourself, with friends. It will shift your entire
where you don't speak
perspective.
You have so much more empathy for people that are that are learning the language that you speak, or learning any other language that's not their native language. And that as a teacher, when I student taught in Manhattan, which I say that people are like, "Oh, that's so cool."
Amazing.
Manhattan, Montana.
Yeah, you have to say that last bit.
It's right outside of Bozeman, like 15 miles.
Wow, did you see my face?
You were so
Manhattan, Montana. But Manhattan actually, so it's surrounded by potato fields. And every year they have
it's like a real life Animal Crossing.
Yes. They have migrant workers come in, usually from Mexico, to work the potato fields in the fall during potato harvest. So I had one student that spoke zero English. She was in 8th grade. I had a few other students that spoke enough English that they could get through without a full-time aid. Looking back on how I handled that situation, I try not to like be judgmental of myself, but I didn't know. I was going to
say, when you know better, you do better. And it's the same thing for me. It is, again, my student that I was trying to support, and I had no accessibility training. That wasn't even a word that we said. Like, I don't even remember that word in college. So it was not even taught to us. So I think you and I probably, as educators, can be really hard on ourselves. If you're listening, I'm sure there were things that you did in your early career that make you cringe now. But yes, being able to empathize with someone who does not speak the language that is all around them. Interesting story. I've shared this though, and Lindy, I think you'll appreciate this. I was at the post office the other day. It was a holiday here, so the post office was closed. And I was just checking my mail, so I wasn't needing an attendant, or I didn't need to mail anything, but there was a lady standing outside by herself, and she kind of waved for me. So, again, being the rural person that I am, I told you I'm in a house. So I walked over and I just said, like, can I help you? She started speaking in Spanish, and a lot of people don't know. So I was adopted. I don't know Spanish. I want to know Spanish. It's on my new bucket list to learn Spanish, but she was speaking and I only knew a little bit and wasn't really sure how to say what I wanted to say to her. So I used ChatGPT and I said, hey, I need you to translate both sides of this conversation so I can give her a solid answer very quickly. And so I just held it up and she spoke into my phone and it said, she wants to know when's the post office going to open. And I said, well, it's a holiday. It'll be open tomorrow at 8 a.m. And so ChatGPT told her that. I think the thing is, she was so gracious and grateful that I even took the moment and took the effort in that 2-minute interaction to connect with her on that level. And I think when you haven't experienced that, it's so easy to go, whatever. But when you're the person in the country and you don't understand and you need help, I think that's the thing. It goes back to that.
And when people are rude to you,
yes,
when you're trying to get help, like my husband and I travel now a lot to Central America, and I know like poquito español, hablo poquito español. But when people are not nice to you, when you're trying your hardest to communicate with them, and they just turn around and walk away, or you can just tell by their facial expressions. Like, it hits you
It hits
so
you
deep personally.
on
Now,
a soul human
on a
level.
soul human level,
Yes.
imagine being a kid.
That's what I was going to say.
A kid
Where a
in a
teacher does
classroom
that
where a
to a
teacher
kid.
does
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Or
No,
someone
it
that
is.
works in the school.
Yeah, it is. There is. I always tell Rick and I talk about this a lot, and I my TikTok channel, if you follow me, has shifted, and it has shifted intentionally because on TikTok I will share things from this podcast and I will share a lot of what I believe, but I have shifted it into me just telling stories on a human level, being authentic. And there is a story I tell where I had this interaction at an EdTech conference, and there was a company that I loved, and I was just telling them goodbye after a conference, safe travels, whatever. Well, there was one young woman that worked at this company, and I said, safe travels, hope you had a good show. And she just looked at me dead in the face and said, I don't know you. And I was like, as if knowing me or not knowing me was a determining factor of being kind and nice
and a
and
human.
authentic and
Yeah.
human. And that has stuck with me for so long because I just think we didn't even have a language barrier. We were doing the same thing. And I just think, if people would just be kind and you would just start putting yourself truly in other people's shoes. Because if you don't do it for yourself, like you don't travel to a country, you don't have these experiences, I promise you life is going to put you in that scenario
100%.
and you're going to learn it the hard way.
But that's a cultural thing too, because I don't know, Rick, you add in, like, obviously you live in the UK, you've probably traveled way more than I have across Europe. Us Americans, United States of America people, tend to be a little much for a lot of Europeans, depending upon the culture, like especially
Yes.
French people,
Yes.
like find us to be like in their face and like too much, and like they take our friendliness as like overtly being what's the word, like not authentic, because their culture is very opposite.
Yeah.
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 It is very much like that.
I understand that approach because the French culture. I mean, there's always this kind of thing between Brits and French that we don't like each other and stuff. But yeah, I definitely see that even like the UK, we can be a lot loud and very obnoxious in some cases,
but
and
not
definitely
necessarily. Imagine Tisha Poncio going to the Wake office where everybody is so proper.
In
I'm not even going to tell you. There's video of it. I do not want to replay that video, but you can see the cultural difference. I'm so excited, and my excitement when I love you is going to be over the top, right? And thankfully, they loved me back. But you're right. That's not always the case.
Yeah, there is a huge shift, and especially in likes of Paris. But then you go to, because I've been to northern France and southern France, and it's completely different. They're a lot more welcoming, and it's the same with the UK, and it's the same with America. That as you travel around the country, it's the same.
Cultural pockets.
But yeah, it's cultural pockets. There's a lot of similarities, but there's slight differences that they take on. And we found that within France that where we were staying, it was owned by the farmer that was across the road, and we actually got to know them. Now, he didn't speak a single word of English, but his wife was a nurse and had a bit of experience speaking English. This was way before like Google Translate and everything. Like internet had only just on the phone had only really just started to come into play. It was like costing you $10 for 1 megabyte to download at the time. It was that expensive. But even with those language barriers, when you've got the empathy with the other people to try to explain and understand it, and the thing is, yes, okay, English is the dominant language, but there are certain words in other languages that sound very similar, and by that you can start to piece together the story that they're trying to explain. Even if you're using other means like drawing or anything like that to at least communicate, the possibilities are there. It just goes back to what you say. It's about just being human, just being empathetic
Well, you said
with
try.
people.
You said the word try. It's about trying. Just get the effort.
Genuine trying.
Genuine
and effort.
trying.
Genuine
and
trying.
effort.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, it is now time for us to shift into Juicebox Confessionals.
Oh, man, I'm
Rick,
so excited.
you ready for this? I know, Lindy's excited. Okay.
I'm always ready for Juicebox Confessions because it's
Rick
always
never
the time
knows.
where I'm always the one that looks more confused than I was at the beginning of the podcast.
Actually, I think he's still looking at the Montana map. Every time I look over at him, I think he's probably still got the map up, like still processing.
I'm not going to confirm or deny that right now.
Come visit anytime.
I was going to say, he's probably making plans to move to Montana now.
My goal is to go to every state, and Montana is one I've not been to yet. So,
okay, so Juicebox Confessionals, if you're new or you're listening, this is just a segment of our podcast because we are the Play Ed3 Podcast. And it means that we're going to talk about important topics that are important to teachers and administrators and parents and students. But it's also the Play Ed3 Podcast because we want to be playful and we want to remind you if you are not taking time to do something that you love creatively, we're challenging you to do that. So these Juicebox Confessionals are to end our podcast and really set you off on your way to go do something that is fun, that is creative, that is outside of your norm. So
you tell them, Tish.
I will. Be honest, Lindy, okay?
Okay. All right.
What piece of classroom tech today feels like the educational version of a CD-ROM?
Oh, interactive whiteboards or interactive flat panels. 100%. Hopefully this is a safe space. I'm a very honest person.
No, that's what this whole podcast is about. It's a safe space and we want honesty. Yes.
Well, my theme, I got my bracelet on. I'm all about the friendship process. Is Make Ed Tech 100 because I'm all about being real and authentic and just saying it how it is.
You have a new podcast coming out.
It's called Make Ed Tech 100.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Okay. So be watching for that.
Yes. So make it real, make it authentic, make it doable, make it easy is my motto. And I am sorry, but interactive whiteboards and interactive flat panels, I will not name brands, are the largest waste of money that schools can spend. In my IMO.
Yes.
IMO.
Yes. I love how you said that. IMO. At first I was like, wait, what? Oh yeah, in my opinion. Okay. Well, this one's going to go along the same lines of like the retro theme. Okay. If teaching had a blockbuster late fee, what's one thing that educators are still paying for from the early 2000s?
Oh, same. Interactive whiteboard software. The software that you pay for that is proprietary to that board. And then in 5 years when those boards die or whatever happens and they buy a different brand, and then now all the things that you spent all of likely your personal time creating in that proprietary software can't be transferred over to the new board. I have had so many stories of educators that have been.
You have so many stories in general that I think this new podcast that you're doing is going to be fantastic.
I have been in schools on site, mostly on site, but also virtually, literally all over the world. And I have so many stories from educators on how tech has gone good and bad, on good culture, bad culture, not just tech, good culture, bad culture. That's one of the horror stories that happens to teachers, especially like the elementary teachers that tend to really leverage that software, that proprietary software.
Sure.
And then they switch brands. And what do you do with it? Well,
yeah, I think, in that realm, even SaaS, I mean, let's not sugarcoat any of it. There's a lot of things I created in platforms that have been sunset and those creations are just gone, right? Where are those going to go? How am I going to access them? So I think that definitely that's a bigger topic. I love that you've brought this up. I'm going to ask you another question. So, what is one EdTech trend right now that gives you PowerPoint vibes from the early 2000s?
Oh. This is a hard one. Oh my gosh. Okay. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, we're ready.
Go for
it. Using AI to just generate those slides that they would used to create by hand. And just doing like the same lecture-y type teaching.
Nothing has changed.
But
the pedagogy
and you save
that
time,
was there
which
before.
is huge. And don't get me wrong, but there's no pedagogical shift,
Mhm.
change.
Okay, we love that answer. So now I'm going to have you finish this sentence. We were promised technology would save time, but instead it gave us blank.
Oh, man, we were promised technology would save us time, but instead it gave us misinformation
Ooh.
about how to truly leverage technology as a learning tool and from a pedagogical perspective.
Yeah.
One of my mottos and the things I say and share all the time is not all screen time is created equal. Let me say that again. I'll say it faster. Not all screen time is created equal. There is a huge difference between consumption-based tech use, like playing games and doing digital lessons, than students using technology to create
100%.
artifacts,
100%.
evidence.
100%.
Absolutely love
This
that.
has been so good. I mean, like, there have been so many moments that you've made Rick shocked, but so many, so many really good nuggets here, Lindy. And I just am so grateful that you've shared your story with us. You've shared your background. You've shared your passions. You've shared your hot takes, which is exactly what this podcast is all about. We want the conversations. If you want to follow Lindy and you want to connect with Lindy and be watching for a new podcast, Lindy, where can they find you?
Okay, so my website is lindyhock.com. So think of the Lindy Hop. I am the Lindy Hock, LINDYHOC.com. If you go there, that is the gateway to everything. I put out a lot of free content. I like to consider myself a go-giver, and I just like to give to the education community. So I'm always putting out new blogs. I do a monthly email newsletter.
Awesome.
I am starting a podcast, so Make EdTech 100. So that'll be on there very, very, actually, by the time this podcast launches, it might be on there.
That's awesome.
Exciting
So if you go to
times.
lindyhawk.com, you might find the Make EdTech 100 podcast, depending upon when you're listening to this. In the new year, for sure, it'll be there.
Amazing.
If you're going to be listening to it. So yeah, that's the gateway to connecting with me. I also share a lot out on socials at Lindy Hawk.
And TikTok.
And
for
TikTok,
sure.
yes. Yeah, never mind. I'll quit talking. I was gonna share my TikTok that's going like viral right now.
You can.
Okay, all right.
Share your TikTok. Yes.
I shared the other day. I put on there. I said, "Teachers, what is your biggest tech fail?" And somebody that responded said something about a Spotify ad playing, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "Every teacher has been victimized by a YouTube ad or a Spotify ad." Or so then I posted a follow up. I said, "All right, teachers, who's been victimized?" And OMG, the stories, people, of the ads. Some of them are I'm like cackling. I am crying. I am sad. Some of them are sad at like what they're getting ads for right now is absolutely crazy. So yes, I'm a big TikTok user. So and I'm trying. Yeah. TikTok is a good place to find me.
Yes, go find Lindy on TikTok. She'll be talking about all the education things. And if you want to follow me on TikTok, I'll be talking about some education things and then a lot of other things that are just going to hopefully make you feel good about life. And Rick is going to be posting the podcast. Play Ed3 Podcast, right, Rick?
Because I don't post anything on socials these days.
Well, you're on the podcast, so
I'm
you're
on the
here.
podcast.
You're
That's
here
all. That's all that
week,
matters. That's all that matters.
Exactly.
But yes. But no, everything, all the links for Lindy, for Tish, and for myself are down in the descriptions below wherever you are listening to. Lindy, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks
for
for
the
having
podcast.
me.
It's been amazing. Apart from understanding how small Manchester is in comparison to many things, it has been a great conversation. And to those that are listening, if you've made it this far and you've enjoyed it, please give it a like, follow us, subscribe wherever you are listening to. Until next week, we'll see you then. Bye for now.